All right, I'm John Tatey, Gameological editor, here with Anthony John Agnello, who's reviewing Remember Me for the site. And Anthony, we've got a bunch of questions from readers about the game. Are you ready to answer them?
I am ready to do this.
All right, Anthony's a little under the weather, so forgive him if his voice cracks. It's not a recurrence of puberty or anything.
I'm very nervous, that's all.
Okay, first question. Clocks asks, how well does Neo Paris compare to the actual thing? Is it something that could be conceivably lived in, or is it just a mishmash of every landmark that screams Paris with a veneer of retro futurism?
Something that I absolutely love about Remember Me is the fact that it does sort of the same large landscape spectacle things that they do in Uncharted or especially Enslaved by Ninja Theory. But what's really cool about it is that most of the time it's very cramped. In the first half of the game, at least, you are in alleyways and climbing up buildings, and it's only occasionally that you get to see this big Parisian sprawl, and it's not really recognizable as Paris at all. I mean, yeah, you see the Eiffel Tower off in the distance at one point, but the rest of it is it's very much its own place.
Okay.
As for its livability, uh, it does a nice job of masking the very linear, contained path you're on. Whether it's, all right, well, you're in like the sewers beneath a slum and you're climbing up. There are all these very natural seeming like obstacles in your way, junk piles and whatnot. And later, like when you're in a gated community, it's realistically confining you.
Okay. Well,
It
that
seems
brings me. That brings. Sorry to interrupt. That brings me to the next question, though. Blatherly, whose username I love, Blatherly asks, how linear is the game? It's clearly not an open world, but does it involve some minor choices in terms of routes, play style, plot, or some small side quests?
The thing that I kind of marvel at it about at Remember Me for is that it is every bit as linear as an old Capcom made NES game. You know, you might as well just be walking from left to right until the stage ends, and that's not a bad thing. The game is better for it, actually, since it's not pretending to be an exploratory game or saying, oh, well, here's the illusion of this big grand world you're in. Like, go do all this other bullshit. None of that. It's just, here you are at the beginning of the level. Now go until you get to the end of the level, and there will be these things that you have to do between there
And
and
you
then.
like that?
I love it. I love it. As
Because
long as
usually
they're
linearity is often a criticism of games.
and
These
I
days.
don't really understand that. I mean, like, I understand the kind of desire for choice and options and all these things, but not if that's not the game you're making. If there's clarity to the game that you're making, then awesome. It's something that I kind of don't like about Uncharted. The fact that it's like, oh, you're exploring these ruins. Like, no, I'm not.
Right.
I'm walking forward until there's a bunch of guys who are trying to shoot me. The same thing with Tomb Raider. It's all a lie. And I like that Remember Me just says, nope, we're trying to tell you a story, and the way we're going to tell you that story is by asking you to walk forward and do these things.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point. It's honest to itself.
Yeah.
Fluka asks a very practical question. How much of the gameplay requires good hand-eye coordination and fast timing, and will it be unplayable for those of us with slow, clumsy reflexes? This is a good question for a lot of games, I think.
This is a really good question. This is nowhere near as taxing a game where you're punching people, as like a classic Devil May Cry. You're not doing any kind of wild calisthenics with your hands to, try and pull off these insane maneuvers. At the same time, it is pretty tricky. And, the combat, most of the game is combat. You're sort of punctuated with these little skirmishes in between areas where you're walking and jumping around. Mm-hmm. And when you look at it for the first time, it looks like it has a very similar flow to Batman Arkham Asylum or Arkham City, where you're sort of in the middle of a bunch of people and you're bouncing back and forth between them and dodging at an opportune time. The system for fighting is a lot more deliberate, though. You have basically you have a limited number of buttons that you can plug into the typical like combos you're doing. So, most games will be like press X and then press Y as X is making you punch somebody and Y will make you kick them. And Remember Me does something kind of tricky and unique where it'll be you have a selection of X and Ys. And now you have your basic X that'll start a combo, but you can plug in another one. And, if you pull it from your pool of X's, pressing X again will make you heal your health, like regain a little health. Or you put another X in and it says do a little bit of damage, or, so on and so forth. And chaining these together is a just very deliberate act of timing. It feels more like an old rhythm game like Parappa the Rapper than it does a big three-dimensional brawler like God of War or Devil May Cry. So, you never have to do anything as sort of swift and crazy as in those types of games, but you still need to have very deliberate sense of timing.
Okay. Well, the next question was, how does the melee system compare to games like Arkham, which I think you already answered. So, Hobbs, by the way, that question was from Merv. I want Merv to get credit for that. Hobbs asks, how uncomfortable or not uncomfortable are the protagonist's grunts while you fight people? Because this was a recent controversy with Lara Croft's grunts in Tomb Raider. Sounded a little sexual. So how did they strike that balance in Remember Me?
Well, the funny thing is as soon as I started playing it, just sort of admiring the visual design and the way the game is presented in the very opening moments, I thought to myself, this game is French as hell, and I want to honor the studio that made it Don't Nod and their Franco roots. So I immediately went into the options and changed the voice track to French and kept subtitles on.
You would do that.
Yeah, that does seem a little characteristic. But there are no grunts. The main character, Nilin, she's fairly quiet. Like, you can hear exertion every now and again, and if you jump off a ledge and miss your footing and sort of land hard on the ground, she gives like but it's nowhere near the sort of she doesn't vocalize quite as readily as Lara Croft.
She's more Steffi Graf than Monica Seles.
Yes, actually, that's a very, very good way to put it. Yeah.
Okay, last question. This is from Eclipse Mataru, and he or she asks, how does it compare to Dark Souls in terms of challenge?
It would literally be like comparing an apple to a 19th century typewriter. That's about how much these two things have in common with each other.
Well, this is Eclipse Mataru says that is this person's new yardstick for entertainment value. Eclipse says, I demand games give me a challenge on par with Dark Souls in order to consider them worthy of my money. So you're saying...
I'm saying look elsewhere. Like, if you're looking for like a Dark Souls level challenge for your spare time, not even necessarily your video game spare time, I'd say, take up the mandolin, maybe try and build a zither, or learn Swahili. I don't know. But don't play Remember Me, because you're really not going to be satisfied. It's challenging, but
not extraordinarily so. Yeah.
I mean, it's just they're completely incomparable. You're just not doing the same things.
Anthony John Agnello, thank you for your time, and we're looking forward to the review.
It's a coming.
All right. Bye.
See you later, everybody.